Hey everybody, this is a game from the Pokemon Perfect League 3. It's week 1, and I felt like showcasing something since I get the impression that a lot of people, when they're facing stall or they're using stall, in both cases, a lot of the new players run into some problems. And I think that this was a recent game where one player chose to use stall, it's Society up top, and made a very good statement with their play style. So, one of the main issues that people have is their understanding of how stall's supposed to work. Because usually it's the same kind of person. The person that doesn't necessarily know how to break stall well, doesn't know how to use stall perfectly. And I am not a great stall player myself, but I do have some understanding as to why it works, and I definitely enjoy facing it. So there are some advantages, right? In my case. The main thing, well, before we do that, consider, subscribing and make sure to follow the GSC Invitational event, which has completed recently, and it's worth the watch. Anyways, the main issue is the fact that when you're piloting the team, a lot of players seem not to understand the point of getting value out of each and every turn. If I lay spikes early, then even when I'm not attacking, I can force the opponent into a situation where they're going to lose some HP. How? By switching to something that checks whatever is in front of me. So if my opponent has Snorlax and there are spikes on their side of the field, they take 12%, I go to Skarmory, they switch out. Already, that interaction means the next time they come in, they take another bit of HP. They lose 12% again, but in the process, they will have recovered 6% each time. So the total, 12, 12, minus 6, you get 12. So that, puts you in a better position. And the more you get interactions like that, the more value you're getting, even without necessarily attacking. So spikes are, without a doubt, one of the most important aspects of stall. As a matter of fact, it used to be considered a stall-only strategy in Gen 2. But, yeah, so that's one of the things. The other thing that they don't necessarily realize is that some people playing stall think they can just switch around all the time and never attack. That's wrong. That's wrong for a number of reasons. Firstly, you are not putting any pressure on the opponent, and if you're not putting any pressure, you're just asking to get crit. There's really no reason for them not to attack you. And if in 25 turns you attack 6 times, whereas they attack 18 times, don't be asking yourself why you get crit. The other problem with switching around all the time is you're giving so much information up to your opponent, and that really matters when they're facing stall. Because they, unlike you, don't have a team that will last forever. They don't necessarily have a rapid spinner. So they won't be able to keep up forever. But if they know exactly which mons check their offensive answers, they'll know how to play around it, or they'll even be able to avoid some of those things entirely. So if you do some of these things, or you throw away some of your stall mons too early, like you force them into a position where you have to rest, you gave them all the information they needed, they're still attacking you, and you're switching around and they laid spikes down, you're in a crappy spot. Okay? So people seem not to understand that. It takes more than just patience. You have to plan what you're doing. And you have to get yourself in a position where the opponent can't really come in all the time. Like, if Snorlax survives T-Bolt, that's one thing, but does it survive T-Bolt twice? Does it survive it twice with spikes on the field? Does it survive it twice with spikes on the field while also being poisoned? You know, things like that. So you have to factor these things in, and I think Society did a really good job this game. So we're going to look at this, and without further ado, let's have a look. Okay, so I suppose we're going to be looking at this from the perspective of him or them, and we'll see. So immediately we have Jinx Raikou. So Raikou is a pretty decent check to Jinx, but it really depends on whether or not it's Roar. Roar isn't that common. Jinx can use Thief, and it's pretty valuable to get some lefties off of Raikou. Society prefers to go straight to Snorlax. And Omicorio will also do that. So as they make 2 other switches. So on turn 1, they end up with Lax versus Lax. Society is going to go straight to Misdreavus, and Cloyster is going to go straight to, Omicorio is going to go to Cloyster and get some spikes. Kind of risky to stay in here on this following turn, but we're going to see how they play that out. The only thing I want to point out is that Misdreavus, you can sort of treat it like a Tyranitar if you're more familiar with the Starmie, Skarmory, Raikou, Snorlax, plus Spiker team. Yeah. Either case, Misdreavus and T-Tar are the Flamelax check. So every stall team needs to have a Flamelax check. Every stall team needs to have an EQ Lax check. So here's your Flamelax check. And usually they don't have Mean Look and Perish Song. Usually Misdreavus on stall is going to have something like Thunder, maybe T-Bolt, probably something like Toxic. They could have Perish Song, but they're definitely not going to have Mean Look, okay? So the idea is that they kind of want to take some chip damage. They want to wall the Lax, maybe force it out. They could have Destiny Bond. They could do a number of things, so that's good. The thing is, they sort of get checked by Poison or Steel types like this guy here. So Nidoking is going to go for that Thief. And so from this point here, you can pretend like Society's team is sort of like the Zakuru team. Again, like Raikou, Lax, Starmie, Skarmory, Forretress, or Cloyster. And instead of T-Tar, you have Misdreavus. And Omicorio has potentially 2 Thief users. This looks like it could be the Cased Victory team, Triple Thief team, the one that BKC popularized back in 2018. So we're going to see that. Starmie's going to come in. It has Rapid Spin, Surf, and Substitute, so it can block off the Toxic. This is also helpful to wall Eggy. So this basically means that if Omicorio chooses to go to Zapdos, Society's just going to be able to spin for free. So, yeah. And can even fish for Thunder misses and stuff like that. So, I'm going to Rapid Spin here. Doesn't take any damage. And at this point, Society is in a decent spot. It's going to go to Fori. And Fori, luckily for Sus, actually has a decent matchup against Nidoking. So, it likes to stay in on Nidoking as long as the Nido doesn't have Lovely Kiss. This Nidoking has Thief, and it revealed Thunder. So, it doesn't have Lovely Kiss. But there was a small chance that it had Lovely Kiss there still. If it did, then Skarmory can pretty much stay in on the Nidoking as well. So here we see the value of doing something every turn. So we got the spikes, we removed the spikes, and then Snorlax used Flamethrower. Because that's fine, you're going to hit something, and that's good. Every little bit helps. Society isn't dancing, going back and forth randomly. I mean, sometimes you got to do that, but that's not what's happening here. So, going to set up The substitute just eases prediction here, so you know how to make a correct move the next turn. And Society spins away the spikes, which is the correct move, because Cloister is now weakened, and each time it's going to get weaker and weaker. Raikou comes in on the zap, takes a crit, which is a lot, but... And it's even a roar Raikou. Okay. So, look at that. Spikes, end of the turn, and not only are the spikes helpful for wearing the opponent down, but look at this information we have. No lefties recovery. This is a Thief Gengar. For if any reason I had a Pursuit Tar as opposed to Missy on my team, I could send it in right here. You know? So that's something you should consider. Society, as a matter of fact, doesn't stay in with Raikou for that very reason. He sees the Thief. He doesn't want another Pokemon getting thiefed. This is, in fact, the Triple Thief team. So another thing that should be noticed is that on this Triple Thief team, you have just regular Curse Talk Snorlax and Thunder, T-Bolt, Hidden Power Water, Whirlwind, Zapdos. So your phaser is Zapdos, and it also has Magnet, so it hits harder. Anyway, the Misdreavus here is going to stay in, and the lefties on Misdreavus allegedly aren't as valuable, but look at that. Misdreavus doesn't have lefties either, so there's the rest. So, yeah. And no Mintberry Wake Up, so it's not a Mintberry set. Snorlax is just going to go for rest. Replenishing HP. Most stall teams are going to have up to 5 Mons that can use rest or some form of recovery. There's your Surf. So that turn there, turn 26 from Omicorio, was a good turn. That was a good move, because his only chances of actually, defending spikes, besides risking it with the Gengar, because you don't have infinite HP, especially on a Thief Gengar. You don't have infinite opportunities to spin block. Is Toxicking on the switch out. So spamming Toxic sometimes, even on something that is already statused. The Snorlax was in a statused condition. That can be a good call, okay? Because how else is he going to do it? They can't wait for Sus to bring in Starmie, because if Sus brings in Starmie and then Omicorio chooses to click Toxic, Sus is just going to click Sub, which beats all of Cloister's options. You can't even boom and break it. I mean, you can break the Sub by booming, but that's stupid. So, what are you going to do, right? Allegedly, you could boom as well, but that's a bit precocious. It doesn't really give much value to Omicorio's team. Maybe a little bit for the Jinx, I guess, but that's about it. So the Toxic there is good because Sus can't block it. Sus has to stay in to block it. But you can't block it until you're already in, right? So there you go. So good Toxic, that's going to wear the Starmie down. Should Sus choose to stay in for any reason, and, should Sus just go insane, Toxic Starmie, there you go. Omicorio had a healthy Cloister. The Cloister could stay in a while, and eventually the Starmie might even have to switch out. It obviously depends on sets and all that kind of stuff. But Starmie can't rapid spin infinitely in this scenario. So, yeah. There's that to keep in mind. So Omi is going to go straight to Lax because not even use the spikes because it's kind of dangerous. So Macy's going to come in here. And look, Society, even though we know that Skarmory is in the back, we haven't seen it. For all we know, this could be frickin' Golem or Zapdos or Aerodactyl. This could be anything. This could be frickin' Jinx. Not having it revealed still tells a lot, okay? It's like it keeps a lot of information in the bag. We know now what Omicorio's team is, okay? And what it can do. So Snorlax gets crit, but luckily, luckily nothing. Unfortunately, it gets a double edge. So the double edge crit, meaning that it killed itself, that might actually have been a little bit better than if it hadn't crit, because it was going to die the next turn anyways. So now this Nidoking is actually dead, and Nidoking is one of the biggest problems for stall teams. So this Society is going to take this to the bank. Go straight to Raikou. It's sleep. It's faster. Goes for hidden power because, of course, I mean, he has to, I guess. Next time Nidoking comes in, it's dead. The Lax, clearly, as you see here, is double-edged Curse Talk. Nido dies, and in comes the Zap, so Raikou can come back in. Of course, it's Roarku, so it's not as comfortable coming in as, say, this Flame Talk Snorlax, but, you know, if you get crit, you get crit, so he's going to use the Roarku, and he's going to avoid keeping it in. Another important thing to keep in mind when using stall is not taking unnecessary risks. Value what you're doing each time. Does it matter? Is it important for Society on this turn 36, to damage the Snorlax? No, it's not. Just go straight to Missy. You have the answer. So a thing I like to do when I'm playing the game, but I also mix things up. A thing I like to do a lot is when I identify things, it helps me visualize the opponent's win cons a little better. I try to see which of my Mons on my team match up the best against my opponents, and I kind of try and make a puzzle. So I see their Zapdos. My absolute best Mon against their Zapdos is Raikou. I mean, I guess it could have been Lax, but whatever. My best answer to their Jinx is my Starmie. The best answer to Nido is Fori. The best answer to, Lax is the Missy, etc., etc. And with that, you can get a good idea of what goes where. And it's hard to go wrong when you play like that. People like to think that they're smarter than they actually are, and maybe they'll be like, oh, but what if they predict me? Well, first, prove to the opponent that trying to predict you is better than just going for, whatever the hell's in front of them. Because if they're going to continue to attack what's in front of them, and you're not playing optimally, you're going to be switching in a bunch of Mons on other Mons that get weakened unnecessarily. Or you're going to take unnecessary damage. The Raikou, for instance, if it gets put into a position where it has to use rest, then Lax and Gengar become more threatening. This Gengar is very scary still. It can boom. So the other interesting thing is that this entire team is in a good spot. Society could bring in Fortress or Skarmory on this Snorlax. Why aren't they doing it? Well, it's quite simple. Those Pokemon can invite Cloyster in. So if you bring those in, then Cloyster's going to come in, it's going to lay spikes, and you're going to have to go through the trouble of rapid spinning. If you keep Mons that check that, then you'll never have to worry about it until you're ready. So there you go. Turn 40, Misdreavus. Misdreavus has Thunder, so it's not a Cloy switch in. Jinx comes in. Omicorio realizes that they have to make a play. They have to make something happen. They're going to go for Ice Beam. So you see no lefties recovery. It's a Thief Jinx. So Thief Jinx means Lovely Kiss, Ice Beam, Psychic, and Thief. No substitute. So it can't stay in on that Starmie. Lax comes in. And Starmie is in a sort of risky spot here. They could recover, potentially. And that, I don't think, was an amazing play. But, hey, that's what happens when you break to the pressure. So, Starmie, just by staying in and using recover, see, that was a great turn. That's a perfect example of what I mean with dancing around the opponent unnecessarily. You can survive a double edge here. as long as you don't get crit. You stay in, you recover, you're at a slight deficit, but you can switch out later. You get some info, you get the opponent to expend their PP, or you can catch them on a false start. You know, they can switch and make a mistake. So that, even though the Jinx goes out, it took 12%, okay? And it's in surf range, so it can't stay in. Starmie's faster. So, great turn there. Man, this team, like Skarmory plus Ghost, is a more, I'm going to say it's old-fashioned, but that doesn't mean that it's outdated or obsolete. It's, in fact, really good. It's just that we've been seeing a lot more T-Tar, things like that. Umbreon is a pseudo Flamelax check. Okay, finally we see the Skarmory, but it's at turn 50, okay? So, why? As a matter of fact, I'd like to know why. Why did they switch? Probably because they just wanted to. Because they just wanted to get some info. Or they just wanted to get the opponent to waste some turns. I don't know. Anyways, the Raikou is in. See, each time it's in, the opponent has to switch to Lilacs. They have to take this hit. They have to click Sleep Talk. And they only have 11 Sleep Talks left. So this game isn't necessarily going to last long. Gengar comes in at the worst time and stays in and gets thiefed. So the Gengar didn't have any lefties. If it had any lefties and Misdreavus didn't have any, then the Misdreavus wouldn't have successfully stolen anything. So there you go. There's the Starmie. It lost leftovers, so that's kind of annoying, but we still haven't seen this Cloyster come in, and at this point, it's becoming less viable for it to come in. So the Gengar's gone. So how else are you going to check that Raikou now? I think Omicorio could have made some plays and go to Zap a little bit more. But, oh, the Zap got paralyzed. I think I missed that. There you go. So the Zap is paralyzed, and it just happens to be a not good Zap for this matchup. This Zap is terrifying with spikes, but it has no lefties recovery and no rest. So not great. Missy just stays in and is spamming a very weak move in Thief. But it doesn't matter because it's going to stick. See? No lefties. Stays there. It stays at 57. It doesn't come back. So another thing is staying in is good as long as your HP is coming back. 69 and boom. So Omicorio forfeits. You could argue that last Mon Curselax could have won, and I'd be willing to agree with you. That's possible. It's entirely in the realm of possibility. But we're not here to talk about every single possibility. We're just talking about a good showcase of how a game is played. At least from one end. Omicorio didn't do a bad job. It was just a little bit tricky. So, you know, not everything went their way. But it's very hard to play against a stall team when it's being executed correctly. It's very hard. Mixed attackers are good at finding openings, but they don't leave as much of a mark as pure physical attackers or pure special attackers. So, you know, it's kind of tricky. Also, they don't have a lot of boom offense here. There's no Eggy, there's none of that, no status. Anyway, if you guys enjoy what you're seeing and think that this may have enlightened you, then I'm happy. So, stay tuned, I guess.